Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar that Erika invited you to today, and thank you very much for joining. My name is Ela Kubak-Grotians, and Erika kindly invited me as well to be your moderator during this webinar. We will be talking today about new forms of sexual abuse of children and young people and what can youth information workers do to prevent it and support young people with those difficult issues. We have a fantastic keynote speaker, three wonderful panelists, and we have all of you. And we also hope that you will be sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. Before we formally open, I have a couple of housekeeping announcements as your moderator. So first of all, this webinar is being both live streamed on Facebook. So welcome everyone if you joined us via the stream rather than here in the Zoom room. It's also being recorded. If you're not feeling comfortable with being recorded or streamed out, you're more than welcome to keep your camera off so that you can follow the webinar, or you can alternatively choose to follow it via Facebook. We very much invite you to have your camera on so that the speakers have a feeling there is a room full of people listening to them and they can see your reactions and work with you. We very much invite you to keep your microphones off so that we make sure that we don't have any background noise disturbing us. My colleague who's here as our tech support might be also muting you if you accidentally, your cat running through your keyboard or whatnot unmutes you. No offense, this is nothing personal. This is just for all of us to be able to work through this webinar feeling fine. We have next 2 hours together with a small break in between so that we keep it healthy and hygienic, because being stuck in front of the screen for too long, we all know from experience, not the most pleasant thing. And on housekeeping, this is everything. We will be using a different tool in a minute to communicate, but I'll explain that in a second. Before that, I'll invite now Eva Reina, the director of Erika, to welcome you officially today.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Erika, thank you for signing up for this webinar. It's a pleasure for us to organize it and to see so many of you there. This webinar is one of the series of webinars that we are organizing in the framework of Erika's partnership with the Council of Europe, and we thank the Council of Europe very much for making it possible. As you could see in the title, we are going to discuss the role of youth information providers in supporting young people to identify, to prevent, and to deal with new forms of sexual abuse. I think we have all experienced that the pandemic has induced even more and accelerated the use of digital technologies, and among young people and children even more. So this has brought in a way significant increase as well on new phenomena that we need to address. And there will be 3 more webinars happening this autumn on topics related to supporting young refugees through information and counseling, supporting young people's mental health, digitalization, financial literacy. So stay tuned for the ones coming up later. And here we have tried to gather different experts from different points of view to discuss and to see and reflect in a way what our role is as youth information providers, as youth workers, to continue supporting young people's rights and well-being, to face sexual harassment and sexual abuse in the new forms that the digital world has brought. And well, we hope that we will have very enriching discussions, and definitely I trust that there will be very enriching contributions from different angles. So I will not take more time, and I hope you will enjoy this couple of hours with us today.
Thank you, Eva. And we will have another set of welcome words because we have with us as well Natalia Turene from the Council of Europe, who's responsible for this partnership of Erika and the Council. Thank you so much for joining. Please do welcome our participants. You will have to unmute Natalia because you're automatically muted as well as everyone else in the room. So on the bottom of your Zoom, on the left side.
I have found it. Thank you very much. I will also adjust a little bit my camera. So thank you very much for invitation. I am absolutely and always happy and pleased to take part in the seminars and webinar trainings with and conferences which Erica organizes as part of our partnership agreement activities. I thank very much the staff. I think they're doing an absolutely fantastic job. Angelina, very happy to meet you for the time being online. I think that the partnership and Erica always exactly is tuned to the most acute and urgent problems that young people and children are facing. It's something which is always helpful for the people who work directly with young people, who are there on the front line to provide the advice and the support and the knowledge. So I welcome all of you to this webinar, which I will be following with pleasure and interest myself. And I hope to have a wonderful exchange with panelists and getting as much information as possible. So thank you very much, and let's have a wonderful event.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Natalia, for these encouraging words. And before I give words to our first speaker, I would like to hear a bit from the audience in a way of a small interaction. So I'll invite you now. What you see on the screen is an access code to Mentimeter. Mentimeter is a tool that we will be using to hear back from you. You can either scan this QR code that you see now on the screen. You can go on the website menti.com and use the code 69856452 that you already see on the screen. We will have now some warm-up questions just to understand who you are, where do you come from, what do you come here to do. And then we will be also using the very same tool for questions to our speakers and panelists. So once you log in, just keep it either on your phone or on your browser in the computer that you're using, so that you can give us some feedback, ask those questions that are burning and that you're ready to ask to our speakers. And for the moment, we hope that we have already quite some people logged in. We already have information. Where are you coming from? So the first one, very simple. Please tag yourself on the map. Let's see where in Europe, maybe beyond, because this is what making webinars online allows us to do, we're coming from. So you have quite a concentration in some areas, in the Belgium, in the south of, is it Sicily? No, I think it's already Malta. Look, in south of Sicily, that would be Malta probably. And we have people in the Nordics, we have some people on the islands, we have Spain and Portugal present, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Turkey and Cyprus I see as well. Fantastic. It's great to know that we have quite a broad outreach and that you are coming from all those different corners, and that this work and this information can reach out to those places. Let's move to the next question we have for you. And this is just for understand who you are. Are you a youth worker, youth information worker specifically, teacher or other youth professional, policymakers among us as well? I already see. You can choose from options. You may identify as both. You might be at the same time a teacher and a youth information worker. You might be a policymaker and other youth professional, because it's fantastic to be able to connect those two roles. So don't shy away from choosing different ways that you want to identify yourself for the purpose of this webinar. We have majority of youth workers and youth information workers with us, but it's also great to see that we have some policymakers, some other youth professionals. Very curious what's under other. So if you want to let us know in the chat of Zoom, you may as well. I can imagine we might have some parents, some people from academia, scientists following as well. We have some teachers with us now, I see as well. Excellent. Very diverse audience. This is great because that will allow us to discuss broad issues. And the last question that we have for you, just to understand what our starting point is. Do you have experience in dealing with youth sexual abuse prevention? And if so, what's your experience? And that's when you can type in a bit of information for us, please. if you have any experience working a specific project. If you do not have any experience, this is also fine. Important to know that this is a place to start learning about this topic if you will want to work further. If there is any specific experience, please do mention, is it through a project? Is it more of a theoretical research that you maybe did on the issue? For the moment, not a very experienced audience, but there are people saying want to prepare for potential experience. Brilliant. This webinar is a great first step for you, and we might have some interesting discussions going then. And for sure, you will be able to learn a lot from our speakers and panelists. We have some experiences, some theoretical research. There is someone who is ex-educator, daily topic to talk about with young people. We have someone working through theater and workshops on sexual consent through a project. Brilliant. There are people giving workshops in schools about grooming, cyberbullying, and sexting. So there are also those of you among the audience who did specific projects or do workshops with young people. Bystander intervention campaigner with us as well. So there is some mix of experiences in the audience. Fantastic if you don't have any, because that means it's brilliant that you're here, that you want to learn about it. Fantastic if you have some, so that you can share from your experience and learn more and support your work further. I think we're in a good place to stop now and start listen to our keynote speaker. And dear audience, it's such a pleasure to have with us Maria Rossi here, a detective senior sergeant working in the Finnish police for 20 years, mostly in criminal investigations and intelligence, and specialized in the prevention and investigation of online sexual crimes against children. And currently being on leave from the steady post as a team leader of CSE team in the National Bureau of Finland to study the Masters of Police Services at the Police University College of Finland, with a thesis concentrating on investigation of online sexual crimes against children by the Finnish police. So a lot of experience there coming from the field, coming from research. Maria, I probably didn't do justice to all the work and the background you have in my short introduction. I leave the word to you with the presentation. For everyone in the audience, while the presentation of Maria is in progress, the Mentimeter that we've been just using to get some information from you will have a slide open where you can already type in questions. So we can already start hearing from you what the presentation of Maria inspires. Please do type those questions in, because after the keynote, we will have a chance to have this conversation further based on your questions. Maria, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak about this really evolving and interesting and important topic that we all have to face, especially the new forms of this child sexual abuse. I think I'm happy with the introduction you gave. I have been working in this field for about 10 years, a little more. Investigator first, as investigating child sexual abuse, and then as a team leader. Now I'm mainly a student and trying to do some research in how Finnish police is doing in investigating these kind of, especially the online crimes. I will be concentrating on the online environment today, because as we are talking about new forms, the new forms mainly concentrate on the online world. But yeah, please, can you change the slide? Let's go to the agenda of today. I will talk to you a little bit about online or offline environments with these new forms. We'll go through the importance of terminology in this area, and finally to the new forms of online child sexual abuse. And I'll conclude by telling a little about what we as international law enforcement agencies, and of course about a little about what third-party organizations are doing in this field nowadays. So yeah, let's go. Europol has put it all in their web page, so I decided to learn a little from them. When I talk in this presentation about a child, I mean a person under the age of 18, whether it's a child or a young person. I will refer to them as a child. And the other thing I like about this Europol citation is that it brings up the images, CSAM, child sexual abuse images of that are really one of the main topics nowadays when talking about this field. It's also saying that online CSE is constantly evolving phenomena, and it really is shaped by developments in technology. The only thing that's really constant right now is the change. It's changing every day, every year, every month. It's hard to keep up, but that's why all of us, we're here now to try at least. First, I'll talk a little about what is it, online crimes against children. Is it cybercrime? When we talk about cybercrime, we talk about cyber-enabled crimes and cyber-dependent crimes. Cyber-dependent crimes are, they include hacking or ransomware or DDoS attacks, malware, more traditionally focused to the cyber environment itself. Whereas child sexual exploitation or child sexual abuse online is more defined as cyber-enabled crime. So traditional crime that can happen also without cyber environments, but where cyber environment can enable new forms and new ways of doing that criminality. Another thing that I want to make sure that you understand is the digital environment. Actually, Council of Europe has in its guidelines in also already 2018, if I remember correctly, understood or written digital environment as encompassing information and communication technologies, ICT, including the internet, mobile and associated technologies and devices, as well as digital networks, databases, content and services. So it sounds really vast, maybe a little complicated, difficult, but the reality is, click please, that online crimes actually happen where our kids are spending their time. It's Snapchat, TikTok, other social media, web games, messaging services, video services. There is no game or a social media that could be defined as the most dangerous or more dangerous to children, because everywhere where there are kids, there will be people who are sexually interested in our children and trying to reach them. Yeah, let's go to this one. I'm sorry, the picture is in Finnish, but this is something that I sort of like to keep in my presentations, as this is one blog that really got me thinking. I'm sort of pulling the rug out of my own presentation, as I was just talking to you about online and offline environments, and now I'm telling you that there is no such thing as online and offline environments. Our kids think that it is just the world. They don't make this division anymore. They call this Generation Zero or Zoomers. For them of you who haven't heard about this, it's those kids who are born around year 2000, from late 90s to early 2000s, and they are the first social generation that actually has grown up with access to internet, with their in their pockets, with their portable devices. It's something that I think that most of us, we can't even begin to figure out or understand what is it. That's I think something that we as parents and youth workers and police and everyone, we need to understand that when we are trying to control the screen time and the environment where our kids are and make the division, and as police officer I have to make the division in some points, of course, due to the crimes that happens online or offline. But to the children, there is no screen time. There is only time. There is only the world, and they spend it with their friends, whether being on the soccer field or bicycling around the town or playing in the games together online. They're figuring out just the same. And from that to more serious topic. This is one of my favorite things that I usually always want to remind people that when we talk about online child sexual exploitation, our words that we use, they really do matter. They create the reality for children, and it's really important that we make the division in our language as well. In too many legislation, there still are terms that refer to porn or pornography or kiddie porn or something like that, and that really is not a way to talk about this material that we actually see there. We can go to the next slide where there is some examples where there are good guidelines to follow. Luxembourg guidelines was presented by 18 international partners during, I think it was 2017 when it was published. We actually, with one of our panelists today, Mika Pietilä, we made a Finnish translation of these Luxembourg guidelines, Finnish version of it, and it was published actually yesterday. And it's really important to really define the language that we use in each and every one of our own languages, how to talk about this topic. And last year there was this movement of call it what it is, CSAM, not pornography, that is trying to really change legislation in English legislation, for example, in the United States and all over the world, to really make the language reflect the way we respect our children. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So we have concluded now that online child sexual abuse and online CSE involve the use of information and communication technology as a means to do the sexual abuse to the children. So it's nothing else than just another tool for these people to use our children in the wrong way. What are the forms? I did my thesis last year, it's a sort of lower level thesis in our studies about the basics of online child sexual exploitation, and I made the division of dividing these kind of different kind of forms in online environments to 3 different ways. One of them is sexting and grooming and sort of text messaging and text that is written that the perpetrators are using. It can be just normal conversation via messaging services that will slowly turn to more sexual or become something else. Then there is another that are the pictures. The photos can be of children, the child sexual abuse material. They can be that perpetrators ask the children to take pictures of themselves. They can take pictures of the child themselves, or they can send sexual images or pornography to the children. That is actually child sexual abuse, including the dick pics that we all probably know about. And then the third one is the live, everything that's happening live, the videos, live streaming and capping. It is a term made by the perpetrators, and it comes from the English verb capture, to meaning that when there is this kind of video communication, the perpetrator will capture some photos or some shots from the video for himself to use sexually afterwards. So one of the things that is new, old and new is grooming. Grooming has been happening probably always, offline and online as well. And the perpetrators can groom either the child or the whole family to believe that they are good guys and really good for your children. Online environment usually involves more of the grooming of the child, him or herself, because it's so much easier to reach our children. It's really important to realize the fact that when kids are using their mobile phones or apps or computers or iPads in their own rooms, the world is there with them and grooming can happen. So it's really important to talk with our kids about what they are doing in the digital environment. Next one is the dick pics. I sort of hate the word because for me, first of all, I just can't figure out why would anyone want to do that to an adult or to a child anyhow. But I think that the dick pics is sort of diminishing the whole thing. It is actually child sexual abuse to send a picture of anything sexual or from your genitalia to a child. So it's not just something that everybody does or that's something that's a thing that's happening. It's child sexual abuse when it's sent to a child, and it's always the adult's responsibility to figure out who they are sending their pictures to. So it's no good to say that I didn't know it was a child or I thought it was an adult. If you don't know, you don't send it. It's as simple as that, in my opinion. And the third one is, I think, the most important thing that I really want to enhance today: the live streaming, the capturing the images, and in relation to that, the SGEM, self-generated explicit material. That is something that we are in Finland seeing really rapidly growing, as well as all of the Europe is seeing a huge numbers of growth in this material. It can be either from a 5 or 6 year old kid who has a mobile phone or has a mom's or dad's iPad and is actually video recording themselves when they're taking a shower or jumping up and down and without clothes, because it's fun and they really do not realize that it's actually sexual to some people, and it's used in a sexual manner in different kind of web pages or places. It can be also really more raw violence and making children take pictures of themselves in sexual poses or actually do sexual violence to themselves, which can be even more bad to children because they really wouldn't want to do that themselves. So that's really a big issue that is really has sort of grown in times of COVID now. But to go to what's happening now, I think the most and the best, as the time is limited today, I would like to talk about this for hours. There is more in, for example, this report. We Protect Global Alliance has made, I think, the most advanced global threat assessment that has really sort of put together everything that's happening nowadays. It's really concentrating to the amount of reports that's the NCMEC, the US National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, is receiving. They are getting millions and millions of reports, and the numbers are growing each year. And most of them are coming to Europe. So that's really something that's sort of worrying, because there are only a couple of service providers that are even doing the reports. If every one of them would be giving these reports, the numbers probably would be even more high. And then there's the number of 77% rise in this child self-generated sexual material that Internet Watch Foundation from Britain has counted. And as there is the COVID-19, we can go to the next slide. With that, we have our law enforcement networks, both with Interpol, that has their own crimes against children unit that actually was making the first reports of what COVID has done to this field. And really, there are a lot of things that have been increased, and of course, everybody has been online so much more that it's showing increase in this as well. Interpol has, we can go to the next slide, worldwide appearance, 100 and almost 200 member countries. So we have really a secure work of law enforcement tackling this wide area. And we have the best tool, ICSE, the child sexual exploitation database that is worldwide used by law enforcement in each and every country, in Finland as well. There are this really nice poster that I want to share with you from Interpol. I think it's on their webpage as well, where it shows that the CSAM, the pictures of child sexual abuse material, are not just pictures, not just photos. They mean that there in the bottom is a child that has been abused. And if we're able to get to the point where we find where the picture was taken and we get the bad guy and we can remove the child from harm, and that's how all of us adults should look at those pictures, not just as photos or pictures, but really it's an evidence of a child being harmed. We can go to the next slide, where there's, of course, to all of us more close law enforcement agency, Europol, that is really working hard with this topic as well. Their AP Twins is concentrating this ongoing analysis project, concentrating on this topic, and Europol has printed and published some more Europe specific reports of the COVID effects as well. We can go to the next one. There are really good assessments. The SOCTA, Serious and Organized Crime Threat Assessment, that is published every 4 years. And it really is showing that online child sexual abuse is one of the main concerns in law enforcement in Europe. As is IOCTA, that is Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment. It is even more concentrating on this topic as well. These both are found online, so I won't go too deeply to them. We have also, of course, a lot of other people than just us law enforcement or police working in this field. We're really closely working together with all the organizations and third-party actors, whereas InHope is one of the biggest worldwide organizations that is operating the hotline in countries where you can report if you see them online. Their trend, or this report of 2021 yearly report, was published just in May, in the beginning of May, and it's also pointing out that the self-generated content is the biggest worry of today. And one report I really want to point out, just to bring to your attention that it is really important not just to on the kids or the victims themselves, but to the perpetrators as well. Because the best way to prevent the child being victimized is that the crime doesn't happen at all. And we have this Finnish third-party organization that is really doing groundbreaking research in darknet online communities and helping the perpetrators and hoping to get them to help themselves. And there was this week they published this redirection report to academic publications together with our Police University College. Actually, the other one, Dr. Salla Huikuri is from our Police University College. She's a researcher there. So something to really dig into if you're interested in the topic. And to conclude, I think my time is starting to be up. There is still hope. I don't want to say that this is really a rapidly growing problem, but I'm really happy that EU is really making some big actions. In 2020, there was published this EU strategy for a more effective fight against sexual abuse. In March 2021 was this EU strategy on the rights of the child, and just now, freshly from the oven, is the proposal for a regulation of the EU Parliament and of the Council to lay down rules to prevent and combat child sexual abuse even more effectively. And it's really bringing some more rules to the service providers to prevent and to make rules in their services, and also to report to law enforcement about the things that are happening in the digital environment. So that's something that's happening nowadays. I thank you and look forward to if you have any questions of this field.
Thanks a lot, Maria, for the presentation, for your preparation and all the work that you put over the last couple of years to actually be able to share this with us. We have already some questions from the audience in the Mentimeter. I'll go through them. I have some questions of my own. Let's see if I can make space for them. First question, very clear and very practical one from the audience. Is there an ideal age? The other one, please, Sven, thank you. To have a first mobile phone for a child?
I think that has to do a little or a lot about the country where the child is living. For example, for us in Finland, and I think in all of the Nordic countries, children are really independent and they're moved around really freely from early age. From 4, 5 to 6 and 7-year-olds are going to school by themselves. Mm-hmm. So in our environment, in our society, it's okay to have the mobile phone when you're 6 or 7, just for your parents to reach you when you're going from school or coming from school. I think that more important question is how you teach your kids and how you talk with your children about the use. We can't prevent them from using mobile devices, or we shouldn't, because it's their work. But we really need to be open about, not just to throw them in the world and say that, hey, best of luck, try to learn how to use that and don't get victimized in the way. So we really need to have the conversations, have open conversations, that the children will be confident to come and talk to us if there's something that's strange or intimidating or something like that.
I'm actually going to plug in here with my questions, just because we had this conversation yesterday with colleagues at the table at the office. Many of us being young parents, my kids still very small, and I'm absolutely dreading the moment that they will start using technology, mostly because for them it will come in about 8, 9, 10 years, and I have no idea what it's gonna be, so this is what I want, how we as parents, youth workers, youth information workers, teachers, people who are with young people, with children, responsible for them, how can we actually be ready to support them if it's constantly evolving so quickly that we don't know what we'd have to be ready for in 5, 7, 10 years?
Kids are our best teachers. For me, I'm really in this field and sort of been working with this for 10 or 11 years, and I still don't know about the new apps. When I make my presentations, I go to my kid, he's 12 years, and I ask that, okay, here I have these Snapchat and TikTok and Facebook. and are these relevant anymore? And he's like, no, they're so old, you need to put that, and then you need to put that, and this is really cool now. And that's what I do. I sit with him and I ask him, what are you using, and what are the apps, what are the games that you really like to use? And of course I do have in his phone that he needs to ask for permission before he downloads anything. I need to see what the application is before he gets the permission to use it. But if it looks okay, I don't leave it at that, but I go with him and I talk with him, and I try really to in a fun way make him realize that it's that I'm actually interested of what's he doing there, not in the sense that I need to know what you do there, because then I would just shove him away probably.
Okay. And then one more question we have from somebody in the audience. If there would be just one thing, to prevent children from child sexual abuse, what would that be from your point of view?
I have to say, if I have to just pick one, that it's the, how do you say it, empowering the child, the sexual education, making them know what is okay and what is not okay, and that is always okay to go away. It's okay to tell an adult no or leave the conversation, because it's really amazing when you investigate these crimes and you see some children that I would like to ask that, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you shut the camera? And they just can't do that because nobody has told them that it's okay to leave. In that sense, I think that's the thing. We just need to give them, give children enough information and strength to say no and be really independent and sort of powerful in their use of social media or games.
We have another question I see popping, so let me just get there. And another one, we had this one, yes. Any advice on how to manage or find balance between our kids and young people's freedom to use their mobiles and social networks and the parental control needed to guarantee that they are safe?
I always say that there are these age limits for a reason. That's probably just one good place to start. If there is an age limit in an application or social media or game, it's there for a reason, and it's good to obey them, even if everybody else is using it. It's parents in this and everything else, of course, our responsibility to be the bad guys. And I'm not a huge fan of too much monitoring our children. I mean that, of course, I like the applications, or some iPhone, for example, has really nice these parental controls that the child needs to first what he's downloading. But in my opinion, it should be more about trust and open conversations than hugely monitoring where our kids are going, because that's sort of giving I think a little strange message to our kids.
Yeah, difficult balance, right?
Yeah,
with what you've been saying before, when you go and ask your son to talk from the perspective of, I'm really interested in what you're doing, not from the perspective, I'm here to control you and be the bad guy, right? Because this is how the trust is being damaged.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still feeling the moment that my kids grow big enough to use
I know.
And your presentation sparkled so many more fears that I feel like this is a moment to start educating myself. And I guess this is also what all of us here in the audience, being information workers and teachers and people who support children, young people, are actually doing and have to be constantly doing. It's a field where we have to constantly be learning and updating ourselves. And indeed, learning from the children is the smartest way, because they will know better than anyone.
Yeah.
Maria, thank you so much. we're gonna move on now because we still have a couple of things to do today. You're more than welcome to stay still with us with the panel, having this conversation with our group's discussions. It's been brilliant having this conversation. Meanwhile, in the chat, you also have a couple of people saying thank you and commenting. We've been leaving links to your resources in chat for people to follow, and we will also share there your contact that you've been kind as well to include in your presentation. So you might have a couple more questions coming in over the next days. Thanks a lot for joining us. For everyone, we're gonna take a couple of minutes of break now. So for you who are in the Zoom, make sure that when we're doing this 10 minutes break, you are actually switching yourself away from the computer. Please keep the Zoom open. We will put here a little timer on the screen so that you see how much more you have. But don't go to your email, but go away and have a stretch and grab some water and some fresh air so that you have your brain ready for more information and interesting stories coming after the break from the panel. For those of you who are following us in the Zoom, you will also see the same timer so you know when to come and join us back. See you everyone in 10 minutes. And hopefully welcome back everyone after this break. I saw some of you disappearing away from your cameras and coming back. This is good. This is what we need. We have another hour together roughly, and during this hour we will first welcome a panel of experts to share from their experience and their expertise and have a bit of conversation. And then we will also invite you, everyone here in the audience, to share in a bit of smaller groups, very open discussion before we conclude today's webinar. After hearing from Maria in the keynote speech, we already got a lot of input and it's time for more. The format of the panel might be a bit different than what you are used to. We will have each of our three panelists first shortly share about their general background and experience so that you know which direction the conversation will go. And then we will open this conversation. I have a couple of questions prepared, but the whole point is that I want to bring up the questions that you as the audience have. So already during the presentations of our panelists, there will be another slide open with in Mentimeter for you to submit the questions, just like you did for the questions in the keynote speech. If by any Mentimeter, don't worry, just let us know in the chat and we will help you out with that as well. And there will be no specific time for addressing those questions and answers later. So please make sure that you submit them as we have the panel going on, so we can immediately bring them into conversation as the conversation goes. Okay, we have 45 minutes now with our panel approximately. You have on screen the details to access Mentimeter so that in a second you can start submitting your questions. And I'm very happy to welcome here our panelists. We have with us Alexandra Duffy, Training and Prevention Manager at the Rape and Sexual Abuse Support Centre in South London. She's been working in the sexual violence sector for the last 6 years, currently leading the training to professionals in education and youth sectors and the sexual violence prevention work with young people in schools and youth settings in London. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. I'll introduce the rest of the panelists, and then you would be the first one to pick up further on your background. Mika Pietila is a senior advisor at Koordinati in Finland, and since 2019, one of his tasks has been preventing and combating sexual harassment, grooming, and sexual violence against children and young people. Mika is the author of two important publications recently, a guide of the prevention of sexual violence in youth work in 2020, and just this year, 2022, a handbook on terms of sexual violence against children and young people. Thanks for joining, Mika. And after Alex, you will be also giving us. And lastly, we have with us Steph Hoffman, Head of Social Action at Promote Cymru in Wales. Since 2015, managing the helpline service for children and young people up to the age of 25 in Wales. And with many years of experience in value-based approach and expertise working in third sector in Wales, with leadership roles in organizations working with mental health, substance misuse, relationship breakdown, family mediation, and homelessness. So plenty of different angles, and now focusing also on the topic of child abuse prevention. Thank you, Steph, for joining. You'll be the last one to introduce yourself, and then all three of you will be speaking. So let's start with Alex. Please tell us more about yourself. Again, I did not do justice to you in the bio, so please let us hear more from your experience.
Thanks so much, Ella, and thank you so much kind of for having me. It was really wonderful to hear Maria speak earlier. And I guess I also just wanted to say that I really valued having the break. I think this is a kind of a heavy topic, and I'm aware that it might be something that comes up in our work a lot, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hit at an angle, particularly if we're kind of carrying our own experiences or experiences of a loved one around any type of sexual violence. So just that kind of reminder around kind of taking care of yourself and doing what you need whilst we're on this webinar together. So I work for a specialist sexual violence service based in South London. We're called the Rape and Sexual Abuse Support Centre. We're also called Rape Crisis South London. And we're one of about 39 rape crisis centres across England and Wales. So we provide specialist support for women and girls who have experienced any type of sexual violence and abuse at any time in their lives. So it doesn't matter how much time has passed between that experience and that person coming to seek support. And we provide helpline support, some counselling and therapeutic support, advocacy if someone's thinking about reporting to the police, or if they're already going through that criminal justice process. And then there's the work that I do with professionals and in schools as well. So we generally work with women and girls from 13 and over, but do some work with girls from the age of 5 around play therapy. And I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about my work in the training and prevention team. So we work with professionals in the education and youth sectors, as well as sort of across the public and charity sectors in South London. And we also do work directly in schools. And like Maria said, we're working with a lot of different types of sexual violence and abuse, and that both spans kind of experiences that include physical contact, such as rape and sexual assault, but also verbal sexual harassment and non-verbal sexual harassment. So experiences like comments being made, or the experience of being stared at. But we're also working with image-based and technology facilitated sexual abuse as well. So particularly working with young people who have had the experiences of being pressured into sending a nude image, for example, having an image non-consensually shared, having an image non-consensually created. So something like upskirting was made a criminal offence in the UK in 2019, or being filmed kind of participating in sexual activity. So huge overlaps there. And as Maria mentioned earlier, child sexual abuse also includes sort of children and young people being groomed into sort of creating self-generated imagery as well, or being shown explicit or sexual material too. And something that I'm really struck by is children and young people's experiences taking place in all different contexts. So home, in school, online, in their peer groups, in their relationships, in public, and it can be perpetrated or enacted, and harm can be caused by lots of different people in a young person's life. So it might be someone that they've met online, but it also might be something that's being enacted by a peer or a partner of a similar age, which is taking place both in the online and offline worlds as well. And what young people and children are often telling me is that sexual abuse, particularly around kind of online and image-based sexual abuse, is constant, it's prevalent, and it's really, really normalised. And that includes things like sexual harassment as well, sort of within peer groups, so within schools, within sort of other social settings. So just a bit quickly about our prevention work, and what I mean when I say sexual violence prevention is that I don't believe sexual violence or sexual abuse is inevitable. And so we work in schools and youth settings, informed by the work of our frontline service, to get underneath some of the root causes of sexual violence. And a lot of this is around naming and acknowledging the realities around sexual violence, and I guess creating that space to regularly open up communications about relationships and consent and respect in a really age-appropriate way. So with young people, talking about the building blocks of bodily autonomy and permission and respect for relationships, and that will link to later conversations we have around sexual consent. Kind of opening the channel of communication by putting the message out there that all children deserve to feel safe, to be treated with respect, and to have our boundaries respected. And if that's not happening, actually that's not okay. It's not okay for someone else to treat us abusively, and there will be support there if we need it. And the work around prevention that we also do is challenging norms and stereotypes and harmful attitudes. So ideas around particularly victim blaming that could be really, really silencing for someone that's experienced some type of abuse. If they feel that they're going to be judged or blamed or disbelieved if they come forward, or if someone's going to tell them that they should have done more to protect themselves, that's going to be really, really silencing. So we're kind of working to challenge that victim blaming. And we're also working to consistently challenge and name the abusive behaviour. So it shouldn't be up to your children to keep themselves safe from someone else's abusive behaviour. We should be naming and challenging that, not normalising it or excusing it, or kind of minimising it in any way. So we do lots of workshops around kind of gender norms, respectful relationships, consent, body image. We do workshops on pornography because we know that we can't I guess change what kind of what is online, but we can create open spaces for young people to think critically about the messages that they're receiving. And a really key theme of our approach is putting young people at the centre, listening to them, giving them choices around what happens next, hearing their views, and absolutely coming from that place that it's never their fault if they experience some form of sexual abuse, which might sound simple, but actually it doesn't match a lot of young people's experiences when they do tell a teacher, a youth worker, a social worker in their life. And so that's why that's something that's really, really important to us. I have far more to say, but I'll stop there.
Brilliant. Thank you. We want to hear more. I was making notes. We will have questions coming in. Mika, your next one. Please tell us more about you and your background.
Thanks, Ella, and thanks to Erika for inviting me to the panel and to discuss on this very important topic. As said, so I'm Mika Pietilä from Koordinaatti, an organization based in Finland, and I'm working as a senior advisor in Koordinaatti already a bit more than 15 years. Yeah, in youth work, I have been involved since 1996, so quite a long career among youth work, young people, youth workers, and this work. What comes to sexual violence as part of Koordinaatti's work, so we go back to 2019, and I would say that in autumn and in end of 2018, there were a series of a lot of sexual crimes and a lot of big sexual crime happened in several big cities in Finland, and there were a lot of young people as victims there. Those times our government decided to put a lot of effort on prevention work, and government and the Ministry of Education and Culture invited Koordinaatti to run one project, how to prevent young people and how to prevent young people that they would not be victims in different crime. We trained a lot youth workers during 1 year. We trained online, we trained face-to-face. Before the training courses, we gathered together and found we were searching for a lot of information on sexual violence, what it is. This work we did in a very good and close cooperation with several organizations, most of them non-governmental organizations that are specialized for example, in sexual violence. One of the products also during that that project was a guidebook to youth workers. If I translate the name of the guidebook, so it's Ask, Encounter, and Listen, and a guidebook how to what is prevention work when we talk about sexual violence? How can it be done, the prevention work in youth work? After this project, 2019 to 2020, Koordinaatti, we have been existing since 2006, and Koordinaatti is financed by the Ministry of Education and Culture in Finland. But in spring 2020, so our work, the national-wide work we do so changed a bit. And the ministry established a network of centers of expertise in youth work. There are 6 different areas that there are 6 different centers of expertise with 6 different areas, and one of them is digital youth work. And Koordinaatti is partner in this digital youth work center of expertise, and as part of the work we do in digital youth work center at the moment is still this prevention work around the sexual violence theme. And we in 2020 in autumn we wrote, or we made a survey, and we collected or we wrote a situation report on sexual violence among young people in Finland. And based on that report and the results and recommendations, we have continued the training work among youth workers, but also we started to write a handbook on terminology. Maria mentioned this handbook. We published it yesterday in the afternoon, so it's a very new thing for us. And with this handbook, and we try to take one step ahead how to support youth workers in their work. Terminology around sexual violence is it's not so easy thing. The topic is very sensitive. For many youth workers, the topic is, and the theme rare and distant. And with this handbook, we try to bring it, make them more aware about the topic. The theme, all different forms of sexual violence, but also make youth workers and people working among young people aware how important it is to use terminology which is, for example, recognizing and the rights of children and human rights in general. So this is what we are in Koordinaatti doing around sexual violence. Like in short, a lot of training, a lot of supporting young people who work with young people to do different kind of prevention work so that young people would have more safe and secure surroundings to live.
Thank you, Mika. You see me popping on the screen so that we can have a reminder for our audience to go to Menti and already start placing their questions to the 3 of you. Thanks again for the background that you were talking about. I see already some links between the work you're doing and what Alex was mentioning, obviously. Let's hear now still from Stephanie. Please join us here in the spotlight. And afterwards, I'll have all of you for a conversation.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to contribute to a very important discussion and topic. It's been fascinating, and I've learned a lot myself in hearing what Maria had to say, as well as my co-panelists. So again, thanks once more. I know time is really short and precious, so I probably won't speak as much because what I want to focus on is perhaps just giving a few examples from our service, just to give a bit of a frontline feel for the work that we do and the stories that children and young people come to us with. So just very quickly, I did want to sort of like introduce myself. I am head of social action with Promo Cymru, and as part of what I do, I manage the MAKE information, advice and advocacy helpline service for children and young people up to the age of 25 in Wales. This is a multi-platform, low threshold, rights-based service. So we're available from 8 in the morning until midnight every day of the week. And we're accessible via phone, direct message, text message. It's free and confidential. We don't ask a whole load of questions when young people come through. Who are you? Where are you from? None of that. We sort of are very child focused and listen to what the child or young person has to say. We deal with thousands of contacts every year, as I said, across all sorts of issues, whether that's sexual abuse, of which we get many, and that's growing, to do with relationships, which are often connected, to do with housing and homelessness, to do with mental health, a whole range of issues that get presented to us. And we don't know in advance when we pick up the phone or start reading the message what's going to be presented to us. And I have to say, and partly, I suppose, in terms of my own value base as a person, you know, I am a mother, a granddaughter, a sister, a grandmother. So on a very human level, all these things really resonate with me and are very powerful, as well as inform my professional approach and practice. So I like to think that I don't divorce myself or see myself as separate. I am a human being with lots of roles, as well as a professional trying to do the best that I can for our beneficiaries and our stakeholders, and they're all intertwined. So every day I do feel privileged and very humbled by the stories I hear from children and young people. And I think we've talked a lot about language and the language that they come through with. They don't use terms like child sexual exploitation or sexual violence. I have experienced sexual violence. They come to us and they say, I'm terrified, I'm scared, I'm really anxious, I'm upset, I'm angry. They speak in the language of emotion, and very often that can be in a state of quite high distress. I'm very quickly going to give you 3 very short stories, just to give an example of the sort of things that come through to us and to give a bit more substance and reality, perhaps, to some of these experiences. So story number 1, Jane, who was 14, contacted us via text. She was terrified. She was being blackmailed and threatened with exposure of intimate images she'd shared with someone she thought was her own age. So what did we do? We helped her report this to the police and to talk to her parents. The postscript to this story is that this resulted in a police investigation and successful prosecution of an older man who was pretending to be a younger man. This took 3 years. So she is now 17. Story number 2, Julie, 22, contacted us via instant message after having seen one of our videos about consent online. She was very sad, very conflicted, struggling in her relationship with her partner. This was the first time she'd spoken to anyone about an incident she'd experienced in the past and which was continuing to affect her. What did we do? We helped her make contact with a service specializing in sexual violence and trauma. Final story number 3, John, 15, contacted us on the phone. He was desperate and distressed, self-harming and thinking about suicide. He was being bullied in school because of his transgender identity issues. What did we do? We made sure he was physically safe and not in immediate danger or in harm's way, either from his own actions or those of anyone else. We contacted the school on his behalf and we helped him explore how to approach his parents. So I hope these give a little bit of substance to some of the sort of things that we've been talking about. And before I finish, just a few more things. I'm probably stating the obvious, but when I've given the examples and what we did, I suppose you, in your capacity as youth information workers, teachers, policymakers, be thinking about what are the knowledge, the skills, and the attributes of the individuals, our advisors, who are getting from that initial point of contact to the end result. What is it that they need to be doing, thinking, sharing, communicating in order to get from A to B? Because it doesn't happen by magic, it's highly skilled, and it's really crucial because they are in a position to make a very big difference, even in that short window of intervention. And I think as well, something that's come up, I do want to make the point that sexual abuse, sexual harassment, sexual violence, it's not new, but for example, the online digital world that we now live in is very much a new space, creating new tools and new opportunities, both for the perpetrators and in terms of the experiences that young people are feeling. And these are seismic changes, but the issue itself, the experiences, why and how it's brought about have been with us a very, very long time. So I just want to kind of like make that point. So we've talked about control and we've talked about prevention. And I suppose from our point of view, what I want to stress is it could be very depressing when we think about how huge this problem is and what we can do to eradicate it or stop it. From my point of view, what keeps me going every day is that little bit of control and influence that I have to make that little bit of positive difference in the world that I live in and the people that I work with and communicate with, that I care for and I have a duty towards. So yes, it is about prevention, but in whatever shape or form, we have control to influence and do something. And there's a lot, and we've heard a lot from Alex about that and everyone else. So it's about prevention. It's about enabling young people to deal with it when it does happen, to be there to help those who can't help themselves to deal with it, and also helping those perpetrators in terms of their unacceptable thinking and behavior. So it's across the piece, and we all have a very important opportunity and role to play in dealing with it. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steph. You'll stay with us in Spotlight, and I'll ask also my colleague to have us join here, Alexandra and Mika as well. So we will be having this conversation now. There are already some questions coming in. I have a couple as well prepared. I see you still, Alex. I saw you wrote me you have some internet issues. Let's hope you will be able to stay with us. The connection is not so good if you hear us, because we see that your camera is frozen. You might want to switch your camera off. That can help with the connection. This is what happens. There we go. Hopefully we can hear you. On the site, in the chat, colleagues from Erica are doing great job posting all the links for you and giving you all the practical information. All of the speakers also agreed to share their email addresses with you. So if after this conversation you will want to reach out to them, we'll put those as well in the chat. My first question, since Steph touched on it a bit already when you've been talking about people coming using this specific language of emotions, saying they feel terrified, to all three of you actually, how to identify young people at risk. Because just statistically speaking, right, when you have a group of young people, you know it's occurring. Alex was saying it's something that happens at every school. We need to be aware. This is a common thing and we can't pretend it's not happening. How do you identify people with trouble, Steph? And then Mika.
Thanks very much. So, I mean, very quickly from our experience, part of the reason why the Make helpline was set up was to offer a safety net for children and young people who may have many trusted adults in their lives, but who might not feel comfortable approaching them about very specific themes and topics. So we offer that safety net of confidentiality, anonymity, and very often what we find is children and young people who test us. Are we real? Can we be trusted? How will we react and respond? So we find that that's really important for a lot of children and young people who find it difficult to talk to the trusted adults in their lives. What else I would say is that very often these children and young people, you know, are increasingly what's being called as kind of like the missing middle in Wales. I don't know if that's language that's common elsewhere, but they are children and young people who may not be on the radar in terms of being obvious, like being in the looked after system, or you know, having some other kind of like additional barrier, but they are coping and functioning, but there's an element that means that they are reticent and will not share or be open about problems that they are experiencing. They find it very difficult to share and be open. We get a lot of comments from young people. I can't talk to my friends. I don't want to talk to my parents. I don't want to give them more things to worry about. So they internalize it. So we're there as that safety net. Having said that, we know obviously from statistics, our prison population is full of adults who have been abused and have become abusers, who have witnessed domestic violence and who have become, you know, abusers in terms of domestic violence. So it's intergenerational and it's cyclical, and there are key indicators, what we refer to as adverse childhood experiences, that can inform what kind of people that we're looking at and what's likely to happen. The other thing I would say very quickly is something that Alex touched on, which, and I think is common again. There is a huge prevalence and growth in terms of the normalization and sexualization of our relationships and communication, which is perhaps new, evolving, and unprecedented. So while a lot of children, young people might be able to cope, might be resilient, we have the Everyone's Invited campaign, you know, lots of children from school saying about their experiences, how that will work out for them in terms of how they deal with that here and now and how that informs their future development, I think is a really big question mark.
All right. Thank you. Mika, you had something to say, and then also Alex. Brilliant.
Yes, thank you. There were very many things that Steph already mentioned that I had in my mind, and you were, Steph, talking about a safe environment, which is something that I think youth work in general is very good in, and in youth work, one of the important things for young people who have faced sexual violence is that they find a reliable adult, a person who they can rely on and can be sure that this person helps me. And when you create safe spaces online, offline, so that is one thing which helps young people to talk or give small signals that something happened to me. You asked Ella that how can you identify? That's very difficult because a young person, a child who have faced or has been a victim of sexual violence. So there is nothing that necessarily that change in your face or in your physical presence, which we others see. So that's also why I, when I mentioned one of our tools which we created is that ask young people how they are. That's a way also to create a safe space, create a connection. Also encounter, we are youth workers are good in encountering and then listening. Youth workers necessarily do not have to have any answers to all questions, or you do not need to comment all the things that a young person is telling to you. It's important that you support, you listen, and that you take care that this person, the young person, gets further support, because it's not, we have to remember also that the youth workers cannot be responsible of all actions. We need to be kind of specialists, experts in referring and showing and taking care that the young people gets the professional help and support.
Thank you. And we had Alex drop out for a while, but she's back with us, although without video. Alex, you had a comment as well.
I did. I'm so sorry about my internet. This has never happened before. I don't want to kind of duplicate anything that Steph or Mika have said. I think there's so much there that around creating the space to listen to children and young people. And Steph, I actually hadn't heard that language around the missing middle, but that really speaks to our experience as well. And we're often asked by schools, like, oh, there is this group of children, maybe they're on child protection plans, kind of here in the UK, can you just do work with those children? And we say, actually, we need to be having conversations with all young people, because we don't know who is going to be holding an experience, coping, functioning, flying beneath that radar. So there's definitely something about your relationships with young people as youth workers, youth information workers, as counsellors, around if we're noticing a change in behaviour, if we're noticing a change in mood, if some of those emotions are coming up for children and young people, how do we open up that conversation and get a bit professionally curious? I've noticed this, I've noticed you've been seeming more withdrawn, I've noticed that your relationship with food is changing at the moment. I'm wondering what's going on for you. I'm wondering what it's helping you cope with. I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to talk about, to create that space, as has just been said, to kind of, you're asking, then you're kind of encountering and really doing that listening. And I sometimes think that we can get and feel quite de-skilled around sexual abuse as workers who might be incredibly skilled with working with children and young people, having other types of conversation. And for me, it's around what knowledge do youth workers need around young people's lived experiences of sexual violence, and around concepts like consent, and also what specialist services exist, so they can kind of hold that conversation, really hear, validate that young person with all that they've experienced and all that they're feeling, and make sure we're linking them into the right support, because that's about saying, I'm taking you seriously and I believe you, and it's not okay that this happened. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that question, really.
I did not unmute myself, that's my basic mistake. Brilliant what all three of you are saying, because it's actually leaning very much into one of other questions that I had there, and you all already spoke about it. The question was about how can we as youth information workers, youth workers, teachers, people surrounding children and young people, make them feel safe and encourage them to report, because we know it's not an easy thing, it's not a natural thing. You've been saying it's a difficult language to use. You've been saying these are not comfortable conversations to have with peers because there is so much shame and stigma around it. And what you've already mentioned, I picked up, is really being in this attentive and listening mode and creating this, building this trust. I can imagine it's a very long-term process as well, because it is not a kind of thing that you will talk to a complete stranger about. Also because your trust in older people have already once been shattered. Have you experienced abuse, right? So do you have any specific tips, tricks, ideas, stories about how can we as youth information workers create this environment of safeness so that people also feel encouraged to go and report it and have the trust in the criminal justice system that it's there to support them? I see all of you nodding and feeling like, yeah, this is a tricky one, right?
I'm happy to sort of start again,
Okay,
because I'm sure Mika and Alex will have loads more to say. I mean, I think again, in our experience, the way we approach it, which I hope is perhaps resonates with youth information workers or other professionals in the front line working directly with people, it's about having what we call the what matters conversation. So assuming that a young person has approached you. So, you know, very often we get examples of youth workers who are not specialists, you know, they might be like outdoor workers or, you know, so they haven't got that knowledge or those skills, but because of the relationship, that young person might feel very comfortable with that youth worker and use that youth worker to start engaging in that conversation. The worst possible thing that that youth worker can do in that situation is, whoa, I don't know what you're saying, I don't feel comfortable, you know, kind of thing, you know, which is totally understandable. But really in that situation, you need to be strong, you need to be calm and to hold that young person. So you don't have to be an expert. The really important thing, wherever, whenever that young person chooses to disclose something, is to hold that young person, say, wow, I hear what you're saying. You know, this is really courageous of you to be sharing this with me. I've got to be honest. I don't know that I have all the information that I feel I need to help you. I want you to know I'm here for you and I'm going to see what it is that I need to do. Maybe I need to speak to someone else. So it's those small steps. And even before reporting to the police, whoa, there's all sorts of things about holding that young person and making them feel safe, and not that they're going to be thrown in at the deep end, because there are all sorts of consequences, like that example I gave you of the 14-year-old who came to us. It took 3 years, and without the support and help of a very loving family, her friends, you know, if she'd been on her own, that might have turned out to be a very different story to the way it turned out. So yes, reporting is important, but there are all sorts of other steps and other things that need to be considered, and children need to feel safe and supported and understand what is going to be happening to them, because once they open up, a lot more people are going to be involved, and they might not necessarily know what that means and not be prepared for what the consequences of that are.
Thank you.
Stop. Thank you.
I saw Mika's hands, I see also Alex's hands. So I'll give voice to Alex now just to mix up the order a bit, if that's fine. Go ahead, Alex, please. We have you now. We wanna
yeah, whilst it's still working. I loved what Steph, you said there about kind of calm, that groundedness. But I guess I'm also thinking about the way that we work as a service. We use a model that we call the empowerment model, which I guess is all about recognizing that if abuse is about power imbalances and control and entitlement, then someone is often left feeling really disempowered. And someone can also be disempowered by other factors, including, for example, their age. age. And what children and young people tell us is they tell someone because they want some support, but then it snowballs, and it feels like it's out very quickly, once again, out of their control, and that can feel incredibly re-traumatizing in lots of ways. So I always think with youth workers and education professionals around within your processes, including things like safeguarding, if you need to escalate anything or share information, where can we have those micro moments of choice, which we're giving back to the young person, so they feel that they are checked in with, updated, asked about what would feel helpful, because what we find is that that bit is often forgotten when we're trying to do work around kind of keeping that child or young person safe. Their voice is often forgotten, so it's really important that we're thinking quite creatively actually about where are those even small moments where we are giving something back to a young person. So it might be when I work with a child or a young person, I need to pass a piece of information on. I say, how would you like to be updated about this? Where would you like to have a conversation and sit down and kind of talk about the next steps? I think it's also really important, like as organisations, that we're really clear about our boundaries with young person around confidentiality. So when would we need to pass information on, because they're often testing those boundaries. And I think it's also really important that we're modelling kind of values such as consistency, honesty, and that we're modelling behaviour that's opposite to abusive behaviour. So we say what we're going to do, and then we do that thing as much as possible, that we're as clear and as honest as possible with our boundaries. And I think just lastly, around creating safety, as an organisation, we constantly need to be challenging the myths about sexual abuse, particularly that put the blame or the onus on someone that survives it, because everyone hears that, right? So people causing harm hear those messages that it's not someone's fault and that they will be held accountable if they cause someone else harm. And young people that might be experiencing sexual abuse also hear that I'm not going to be blamed if I tell someone in this space or in this organisation about my experience.
Thank you, Alex. Mika, something to add?
Yes, I could add the point of view we were discussing many times with the youth workers during our project on 2019 and 20. The different youth workers and organizations, they noticed and they were aware that they should do something, but didn't know what to do and where to start from. And of course, we provided training, but one thing which was very important and is very important, and we were pointing out all the time, was that decide and discuss in your organization or in your team all together, and it has to be a common decision that you work or you take the sexual violence as one of the themes in your portfolio or in your services that you provide. And what is behind that is that there are a lot of attitudes, your own background. You might have some things that you need to deal with yourself before you can start to work with young people having sexual violence, or who are with young people who have faced sexual violence. And also another thing which we faced beside this was that mostly the youth workers wanted to do, and they were aware that they have to do something, or they had already been dealing with situations where they faced and met young people who had been victims of sexual crime. But often the part of the organization who did not agree with this plan, where the managing part, the directors or the board, for example, in NGOs, And they were very often thinking how to explain or how to set up this kind of service, or how to explain to the management why it is so important. Even a lot of people know that these kind of young people face these kind of challenges and difficulties in their daily life. But in many organizations, management said that this is not our duty, or it's not our deal, or there isn't anything that we can do, or there is no enough skills or competencies in our organization. And I think it's not about the skills and competencies that are not there. They are all things that people can step by step also gain and strengthen the competencies in those skills.
All right. Thank you all. I have an announcement to make to the audience. I'm taking the freedom as moderator to change a bit what we said initially we will do, since there is still so many questions from the audience coming. Instead of dropping in those breakout rooms and having the audience having a small conversation, I want to keep hearing from you, because the audience want to keep hearing from you. I hope everyone's fine with that. If you will want to stay and share your stories, please do so via chat. We also want to hear from the audience. But I want to pull in 2 more questions maybe before we finish, as we also want to finish on chat on time. And indeed, there is this question that also gained some support in form of likes. I guess partly based on the fact that Alex, you were mentioning that you work specifically with girls and women, but also maybe from other stories that Steph was bringing. What about boys? Because might be less common, but they also are targeted by abuse, right? And specific services, specific support. Is there a difference in how you support different genders? Mika, please start off, and then we'll have Alex.
Yes, this is a question which we face very often, for example, in our training courses. And yes, of course, boys face also sexual violence, not as much as girls, but there is also, according to one survey in Finland, the final result was that for boys it seems to be even more harder to and more complicated to talk about the sexual violence experiences, or if they have faced abuse or exploitation. We have in Finland, we have, for example, one organization which is specialized to help young boys with sexual violence experiences and being victims in sexual violence. Then there is always this also when we talk that who is more, now I can't remember who is more vulnerable if we think sexual violence. So young LGBT young people, all people with different minority backgrounds. So they are very often more vulnerable for online and of course also offline sexual violence.
Thank you, Mika, for bringing this up. Yeah, Alex?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Mika. And yeah, I guess there's something for me around, so we are a specialist service that supports women and girls. We work within a network and in partnership with other specialist organisations. So in London, there's an organisation called Survive UK who support men and boys who have experienced some form of sexual violence and abuse over the age of 13. And I think for me, thinking about those specialist services, it's about recognising that the this can happen to any child or young person. We do see some gendered patterns in terms of prevalence. So I think it's in the UK, some statistics around 15% of girls and 5% of boys have experienced some form of sexual abuse before the age of 16. But I know that those statistics are going to be way lower than the reality. But for me, thinking about support is thinking about how do we respond to the specific barriers that those young people will be facing in coming forward. So as Mika said, there might be specific barriers facing boys and young men, from speaking about their experiences of sexual violence, including around ideas about masculinity and how they should behave, or even things that they should want. So a lot of boys and young men have told me that there is a pressure to be seen as engaging, particularly in heterosexual sexual activity. And so when they experience some form of kind of abusive or harmful behaviour, it becomes really, within those contexts, it becomes really difficult to talk about. I would say it's hard for anyone talking about abuse, but where are those specific barriers that are shaped by someone's identity? And absolutely, as Mika said, it's not that idea that someone's experience of abuse will be shaped by other kind of experiences of marginalization. So thinking about someone from a minoritized background, thinking about LGBTQ children and young people, thinking about disability and religious discrimination as well. So I also think about what are the barriers to being believed and being taken seriously if a young person is also experiencing racism, also experiencing homophobia or transphobia or ableism, for example. So yeah, really important question. I'm really glad it was asked.
There is so much more to talk about. I'll have one last question and then we're gonna head home, sadly. And it's not an easy one. And I think Maria is still with us. So if you will feel like intervening, I'll also invite you to join the panel, because it's a question coming from somebody from the audience about the new metaverse, right? What's your view on the metaverse and the dangers and the risks and the challenges it presents with apparent lack of regulation and age restrictions? Yes, and there is more going in chat. We're already seeing unacceptable language, behaviors, and assaults taking place in this space. It's in virtual reality. What impact it might have on users, particularly on young persons' understanding of respect and consent. So very complex question, last 5 minutes. So your very first take on this is a new challenge coming up, right? What can we do about that? Mika.
I would say generally it's not about like what happens there, because like Maria said in the beginning, in the keynote, was that for young people, for example, there is not online and offline world. Everything is like a world, a global world, and this is also why we are in Finland encouraging youth workers to also to take steps ahead and to talk about media and information literacy skills, and also to talk about sexual violence, also to talk about these different phenomena that comes up. So not to if you don't know all things about it, so it should not limit to take them into discussion. It can be, for example, with young people, it can be a very good moment to start to talk about, for example, do they know what metaverse means, and what it can, how they see it, and how they see, for example, the digital and virtual lives, how they influence in their daily life.
Yeah, I can pick up from that.
Yeah.
Can you hear my voice?
We can also see you. You're in the panel now. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with what Mika said, but also I'm kind of rooting for the application and metaverse the organizations that are holding them, that there should be rules and there should be more regulation on how. I know it's really a difficult thing to age verification. It's there will always be some holes in it, but there should be some regulation from the technical side, from the service holders side as well, more than there is nowadays, because that's just the reality that there will be a lot of new applications and metaverse or anything else that the children will be always interested in those, and it is really a difficult question, because those kind of virtual realities can be a sort of playing ground for adults in a good way for some people, and if they really don't know or don't have an idea that there might be some children in it, then it's also difficult from legal perspective to try to make any crime out of it. So it's really, this is more of pondering. I don't have an answer to this.
Yeah, I guess
but it's a difficult question.
We're a bit in this pondering mode, because this is so unknown and so approaching, right? It's circled back to our conversation from an hour and a half ago, that there is so much new coming in that we have to be constantly ready on the lookout for new solutions. Listen, everyone, it's very hard for me to close this conversation. I see you stuff waving, but I also want to hold to the time. So I'm going to leave now this panel and have it closed. Thanks again. Thank you, Maria, for joining back in. Thank you, Alex, Mika, and Steph, for sharing from your experience. We could have had another day or two probably going on about that. It was wonderful having you. Thank you to the audience for the questions as well. I know not all of them have been answered. We will share the emails of the speakers so that you can still reach out to them. They've been kind enough to make themselves available. And there will be a follow-up email from Erica. And with this being said, I'll invite here Angelina Pereira from Erica, who's coordinating this project and these webinars, to close for us all. Thank you again, everyone, for your participation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. It's the first webinar this year with a cooperation with in terms of partnership with the Council of Europe, and not the last one. So I also invite you to follow the Erica social media accounts that you might see, and Visuality might now share, but if not, I can share also in the chat. And so stay tuned for more webinars to come, and enjoy summer. And I again want to say a big thank you for all the participants, all the smart and challenging questions that you had, to the panel for amazing discussion. I really enjoyed it, and also for Visuality for perfect moderation and all the technical support, and of course to the Council of Europe to be in this partnership and make it possible to happen such webinars. So stay tuned, and see you next time in the next webinar.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks so much.